Welcome, welcome. Hope everybody's doing well. Michelle, I don't know if you cue the music, but
I got
you found,
distracted with the live link.
you found a beautiful announcement intro sound that maybe we'll start using. I don't know, but welcome. We're live here at This Week in Drones, and we're going to be talking about some great topics today. Specifically, in about 2 weeks, there is a drone energy and robotics conference coming up that I'm going to be attending, and Jason Day with Texas DPS is going to be doing a whole breakout there, a whole co-located event that I wanted to share about here in a minute regarding drones for public safety. And so we just wanted to focus the attention of this, or kind of the topic around this panel and a few people calling in around, basically the drone industry for public safety and where that's at, a snapshot of where we are in 2025 for that sector. How's that going? Are there, various, what do the policies look like that are coming out to support that industry? Where do we see it going in the next, however many months we have left in the year, 6-7 months? So would love to create a two-way dialogue as always. So please send in comments, questions, thoughts for this panel as we discuss this topic. And if you want to, get started, I would like to hear if you guys out in the comment land want to throw in a quick note whether or not you are attending the Drone Energy and Robotics Conference in Houston coming up in 2 weeks, because Jason and I would love to connect with you in person while you're there. Feel free to even comment if you can't make it, but you're coming to something else. We want to make this community driven and, see each other in person whenever we're at these events together. So with that said, we'll do some brief introductions and then kind of dive right into the topic. And so I'm David Lewin, your host, and I'm also critical infrastructure regional sales manager with Echodyne Radars. So always having fun helping create that airspace awareness aspect. So I guess, Michelle, I'll throw it to you, and then Brandon, and then Jason, I'll have you end it, and then I'll pull up a screen share and we can dive into the topic real quick. But yeah, Michelle, go for it.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back. I am Michelle Duquette. I run a consulting firm, 3MAD, Michelle and Duquette Air. My focus is trying to strive towards interoperability of these new technologies. And, as most of you know, I have a real passion for public safety. I feel like they are the community that has the most urgent need right now. So I'm always happy to have these conversations to dig into as much as we can on how we can find ways to bring this technology to bear for them.
Beautiful. Thanks, Michelle. Brandon.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Brandon Youngblood, co-founder and CEO of Drone Security Services. Prior FAA air traffic manager with the UAS Security and Counter UAS office. And I left the FAA in November of last year to help organizations and both on the civil and state, local, tribal, territorial government level, equip their organizations to defend against drone threats and protect their facilities, assets, and people. So I greatly appreciate being on the show. Thanks, David.
Wonderful, wonderful. Jason.
Yeah, thanks, David. So just for the record, for everybody who's seen the advertisement for this, I've been on so many times that I'm not special, and at this point, I'm not even a guest. So I'm Jason Day. I manage the UAS program from the administrative side for the Texas Department of Public Safety. And then that's my day job. My night job, I'm with Drone Responders as the co-chair of the Texas Public Safety Coordination Group. So we are the second state chapter of Drone Responders as we've expanded out the Drone Responders network to be able to provide a better resource for every state and every region across the country, because we have such a wealth of knowledge amongst the Drone Responders network, right? It's really about getting all that down to all the boots on the ground. So what you're really going to see, and this is part of a larger effort within the organization, is that you'll see Drone Responders at a lot more events coming up. We just did a bunch of updates to the Drone Responders website. We've been revamping that. We've been really reaching out to that network saying, what do you want on the website? So we've been kind of honing that message so that everybody has the resources that they're looking for. And then we're about to take it to the next level where you'll be able to download, whether it's on Android or iOS, the Drone Responders app. And you'll be able to get real-time notifications every time Charles posts something new. There's some new type of process out there with the FAA, or just general information that drone responders can provide. So the next event that we're going to be at, as David was speaking about, is the Energy Drone and Robotics Summit in the Woodlands in Houston. So this is a really unique area of the Houston area. It used to be just a completely wooded area, and then they started building it out. It's got really nice hotels and restaurants and whole community atmosphere, but it still has that real wooded layout, right? There's still lots of trees. There's a nice conference center, and this is where the Energy Drone and Robotics Coalition puts on their annual summit. And we, DPS, started going to this a couple years ago, and we found it extremely valuable very quickly, even though it's not public safety centric. We all know, everybody's still kind of trying to get over AUVSI last week, but during the Drone Responders Forum at Exponential, what we found is the overarching theme was the change to this idea of public-private partnerships, where public safety needs to focus a lot on developing these relationships with manufacturers, with service providers, with other public safety adjacent organizations, so that we can provide a more unified and holistic response, whether it be disaster response or tactical response, wildfire, all of these things, because there's so many things going on across the country. So the Energy Drone Robotics Summit really gives drone responders an opportunity to focus that conversation about emergency response. And that's what we will be putting on. So it's the Drone Responders Texas Public Safety Coordination Group is helping put all this together. And this is the Texas Emergency Response Forum. So we'll have about a day and a half of content. The schedule's being updated a little bit, but it's pretty close to done at this point. But we're going to talk about how public safety can build a program for disaster response, and what are all those lessons learned, and what kind of technologies and procedures do they need in place. We're even going to talk about drone detection during this forum, because not as a go find bad guys, but more from an airspace awareness perspective. So in the Houston area during Exponential, we as a state have been working with Pierce Aerospace to roll out remote ID sensors under their FAA program. And we started in Houston. So we're going to kind of talk about how that went, and we'll be able to start maybe looking at some of the data between traditional RF drone detection and remote ID sensors, and start to kind of compare that to see which is better, or if it needs to be that kind of layered approach to all of this type of information. Then we're also going to talk about, what do you do before and after this kind of response? How do you process that data standardization, all of those topics that go into public safety UAS response, again, inside the context of those public-private partnerships. One thing we DPS have been doing for about 18 months now is getting to know all the AAM providers that are in the state of Texas, because our opinion is, if we have another event like Hurricane Harvey, and we need the highways at that point were rivers. You couldn't get vehicles across that. So how do you get bottled water, medical supplies, all of those things you need to the people that need them? Well, we pick up the phone and we call Zipline and Wing and Amazon and say, bring us all your delivery drones. That can help those citizens that are stranded in those areas. But to be able to do that, you have to have all those relationships. You have to have those hugs and high fives and go out there and know who to call beforehand, not just in the middle of the response. So we think it's going to be a really great couple of days. It's a really unique environment. If you've never been to the Woodlands, it's great. This is a great conference. There'll be about 1,500 people there, at least. A lot of different technologies, a lot of vendors are on board. If you're in this space and you are into supporting public safety, we are looking for sponsorship for some of our sessions right now. So just contact me, at jason.day@texgrew.org, and we'll get you all set up on that. So thanks, David.
Beautiful. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for sharing all that. And on that note, for our listeners, you may see the note there at the bottom of the screen here, but you can save $200 on the overall conference registration if you type in that link, or it looks like Michelle dropped it in the comments as well. So thanks, to the conference for offering us that. But yeah, I mean, please do reach out to Jason in support of the program. And actually, I think Charles, you're ready to pop on here? I'd love to. Yeah. Sweet. So Charles Warner, great to see you again as well. And Charles, I wanted to hear from you a little bit as well regarding, drone responders, these co-located events, and the first kind of main topic anyway, I wanted to kick off for today, which you've spoken to quite prolifically over the last few months. So maybe you could, the second piece of what I'd love to hear you comment on would be legislation, that may have opened some doors here in this industry. Any kind of like policy changes in the last year or a few months, and ultimately, where do we see things landing in 2025 in the next 6 months? If there's anything interesting on the policy side. But I'll let you speak to the conference event stuff, and then if you want to make a few comments about the policy side, I'd love to hear some of your thoughts.
Sure. Thanks for the opportunity to be here as always. And thanks, Echodyne, for doing the podcast. It's a great thing that you all do each week. And you've got a great team here as usual. You've got Michelle and Brandon, who also are advisors to drone responders as well. So we're continuing to pick up more and more people to really bring a lot of expertise into drone responders, as we have also brought in Carrie Fleming and Michael O'Shea, who both retired from the FAA, and they'll be working with us as well. So we're exciting. But just to talk a little bit about conferences first, as I mentioned, the Energy Drone Robotics is coming up. And what we do is we've offered these opportunities to create co-located events at Energy Drone Robotics, and then AUVSI, which we just ended, and then Commercial UAV Expo, which will be in September. And our goal with those are to give opportunities. It's not as big a conference as some of the other things that we do, but it gives opportunities for people in those areas that might not be able to travel the farther distances to get there, and for us to give that exposure. But what we are seeing is, for example, we have the national conference that we do at Busch Gardens each year in March. And now we have the Florida, the FlowGrew conference, which is done in February. And now we have the TexGrew conference, which it's just occurred here recently, right?
Yeah, it'll be in December this year.
Yeah, December again this year. And now we're starting to see, as Jason mentioned, states wanting to do state drone responders coordinating groups. And so we have Ohio that's building out. We have North Carolina that's talking forward. And just for people that are listening, if you happen to have an interest in doing something in your state to develop and help bring people together as a group, we're willing to listen to that. You can send me an email to charles@droneresponders.org, or you can send an email to Jason, and we're moving forward. I want to give a shout out to Jason specifically because he's been responsible for the enhancements to our website. So now we're making it much more user-friendly, much more information to you, so you can quickly see the events that are coming up, that you can get access immediately to our blog that puts out the latest information that comes out. It gives access to our dashboard and our resource center. All that information is free, which we're the only organization I know of that membership and all the resources that are out there are free. And we look to try to maintain that because lots of places can't afford expensive memberships to join. And our goal all along has been to advance the technology. As far as some of the changes that you're talking about have happened, first I want to talk about drone as a first responder, because that's been the hugest change. From 2018 to 2024, we had 50 plus or minus drone as a first responder waivers approved. Now in the past 2 months, after the changes that we've been working on, and this has been a collective effort. This has been the DFR working group. It's been people like Michelle and Jason and others, as well as agencies and industry. All of us saying the same message. It has changed from 50 in that period of time to 120 DFR waivers approved in the past 2 months.
What?
That's where we're seeing the change. And as you know, from an Echodyne perspective, that template now that's in place really helps at the 200-foot level to get ADS-BN only, to get these things expedited. And I've shared the exciting thing is I was working with San Bernardino, and they'd asked me a couple questions, and they submitted their waiver at 9 a.m. Pacific time. and they called me back at 10:21 and said, we just got our approval. That was an hour and 21 minutes. So this, I believe, is the year of DFR. This is where DFR goes exponentially into the record books, and we're going to go from hundreds to thousands very quickly because we've taken the visual observer off a roof, and it's a very simplified and accelerated process to the FAA. And I have to give a huge shout out to John Meehan and the FAA team there at Flight Standards, because they have turned this thing upside down and really given us the ability to scale. Let me flip over just to make sure we talk a little bit about Part 108, the BVLOS waiver. Now we over the BVLOS rule is we're hearing now, and I'm supposed to be on a call with the White House probably next week of why this needs to move forward more quickly, which they're already on track to do. And they've told us that they look to try to get this in the Federal Registry very quickly, and then it will go out for public comment. And what I've heard here recently, and I don't know if Michelle, if you all have heard anything different, that they're looking to do only a 30-day comment period because they want to get this thing rolling. So put this on your calendar, be ready, be thinking about BVLOS when the rule hits, get on it, read it, be ready to put your comments in quickly because they're looking to move this thing at light speed. The other
Give us a heads up too, Charles, when you see that, because that would be a great way to bring together this community to put our heads together, also create some dialogue around that when that comes out.
And the White House has, we're going to have a call coming up, and I think Jason, myself, Chris Todd, Robert Dooley, DJ Smith, and some others may be on that call just to tell the importance of why Part 108 is important to move it forward. And I don't think it's going to be much of a selling point at this point. This administration wants to move the drone stuff forward quickly. On the other legislative front, we see a number of bills that are coming out on the counter UAS space, and Brandon can probably speak to this better than I can. It's still kind of a work in progress. I think that there's a bunch of things that are discussed. I don't think any of them are where they need to be, but we need to move something. And I did hear some talk about separation between the detection and the mitigation part, of saying if we could separate those two, it might be easier so we could get that detection piece moving so we could actually start understanding airspace and being able to use some of the advanced technologies at the state, local, territorial, and tribal levels. The mitigation part gets a little more complicated, and it does need to be oversight from a federal perspective. I did have a call last week with a couple people on the legislative side asking me specific questions like, what do you think about a federal controlled program? I said, stop, don't say controlled, say a federally facilitated plan going forward. Yes, the training, the certification needs to be like bomb techs, where it's federally trained and everybody's trained and are talking the same language and have the same procedures, but work with the state and locals. And I said, you need to start now with having conversations state and local with governance, because they're going to be the ones that are going to be working to actually make this happen in the states. And you need to be talking with the national organizations like the National League of Cities and the National Association of Counties and the National Association of Governors, because they want to know what this means. Is it a requirement? Is it an unfunded mandate? Is there going to be funding? Are you going to pay for the training? And if you don't have all those people on board as you go forward, you immediately will run into a wall. We saw that with FirstNet. The reason FirstNet was successful is we had all the big 7 national organizations that were all in favor and support of that, as well as the national public safety agencies or organizations that are on board. So there's some work to be done, but we're moving in the right directions. And again, like I said, Brandon can probably speak more to on the counter UAS side, which is more about detection and mitigation. And but fingers crossed, there's a lot of great things that are happening. If Part 108 rule comes out, the question is, what does it say? And what we in public safety have to do is to make sure that Part 108 doesn't take away some of the things that we've actually gained in this latest process. So that's what we got to look at. But as is a rule, nobody can share with us what's in it. So we have to wait till it's in the Federal Registry. But yeah, we'll let it be known. And I think it would be a really good topic for you guys to cover in here as to, what's been seen in it. I know Michelle's is on top of that as well. But a lot of great things have been happening, and I thank all of you that are watching and listening, that have participated. And to David, thanks for the opportunity to just say a few words. Michelle, as I've said, she is that engineer that can take ideas and put them into something that I can understand visually. And I'm like, I told her, I was like, I was at the conference. I said, I was impressed with you before, but I'm sitting there watching her draw these things up as this stuff is happening, being discussed. I was like, you blow me away. And then Brandon, with all the stuff you're doing on the security side, appreciate the insights and the guidance of us going forward. And Jason, you're the powerhouse that's adding some real oomph to our leadership and our effectiveness of the organization. So it's going to be an exciting time for all of us. And again, I thank everybody for helping drone responders be as successful as we've been. Over 11,000 members, participation from 92 countries. And sorry, but I did not see that coming.
Wow.
Definitely stronger together, Charles.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's all about the effort. And when we have the numbers and we go and talk to Congress, or we talk to the White House, or we talk to others, they do listen to numbers.
And
So
Charles, you spent a lot of time thinking a lot of other people. I think all of us want to thank you for your leadership and guidance and a lot of this stuff. I don't think that, and I'm not trying to just say this to kiss the back end or anything, but you really drove in home in a space in a gap that needed to be filled. And the public's, Michelle says this all the time, drone technology and advancement and true integration is happening at the public safety level. And we owe a lot of that to your efforts. And it just wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for that leadership and guidance that you've been able to provide. So I just want to, you're thanking us, but we want to thank you.
You're here.
Well,
and not to make
you're the wings, you're the wind with under my wings. So that's all.
And I don't want to turn this into a giant pat all of ourselves on the back, but it is true.
Unintended.
Yes.
That's good. That's
So
good.
I want to hit on that just for a second. So there's something that I have been, as I've been learning more about the public safety community and getting more and more immersed in it and its people. One thing I've noticed, and Brandon, I think you're gonna resonate with this, is these folks do collaborative decision making organically. It is their nature. They are they're seeking one another out in order to share information and learn from one another. It's amazing. It's like magic. I love watching these folks talk. I love listening to them talk to one another in their own language, because they are, no kidding, following all of the principles of collaborative decision making, the FAA formal program. These folks do it intrinsically. And Charles and Jason, I commend you for curating this culture of sharing, but it's meaningful. It's not just, everybody grab a beer and let's just BS about all the awesome stuff we're doing. While that's fun, and we do that, your collaborative discussions are also on target. They're pointed. They are example driven, and they are meaningful to the folks sitting in the audience. Those folks that were with us at Expo, at the co-located event there for drone responders. There were some folks who didn't have a DFR program, yet they were able to glean everything that was being said on that stage with every single session, because they are used to having that kind of interaction with one another. It's fantastic to watch. If we could just get some of that to bleed over into the UAS community writ large, we'd make a lot more progress. Just saying.
Well, remember that we're responders, so we respond to difficult situations, and we have to be problem solvers. And we don't do any of this by ourselves. Everything that we do to solve the problems that we respond to, take other people and partners and teams and organizations and agencies to do it. And as Jason said earlier, it's these relationships. And we got to have these relationships in advance. We've got to have these conversations that we know each other and we're willing to share. But we're seeing, and I will say in the drone side of things for public safety, we have had more crossover discussions across disciplines than anything I've ever seen before. There is just such a willingness to share and learn, where oftentimes you'll have more police and fire separated. That doesn't happen here. And it's like with Jason, me, and all of us, we're all taking calls every day from people in different places saying, hey, look, I'm trying to get here. I'm trying to do this. What do I do? And we can usually point them to the resources, or I'll answer the questions on the phone, and then I'll hear an hour and 21 minutes later that they just got the waiver. So, which is one of those things. It's the most exciting thing you can see happen is when you're starting to see progress. When Jason, when we look back at this and see where we were just stumbling, and delayed and fighting and frustrated, and all of a sudden it flipped. It's about being ready for it. It's about working together as a group. It's having that collective voice that we're saying the same thing from all of us, agency, industry, made a difference. And there's some timing and things happening in the administration. You know, be in the right place, the right time can be some of the most important things. But to have the message ready really resonated. And to all of you, it's been phenomenal to watch happen.
So I want to take the conversation to a little bit more of a practical place, and not to give Jason and Charles more work, but I'm going to ask something. You've built this unofficial sharing of knowledge. You built this unofficial, and what Michelle just said, language in the DFR space. We need to make it official. We need to set that standard of when you communicate within this realm, this industry, this thing, this is how you talk. These are the words you use. This is the definition of what this thing means, right? Aviation has a very, very standardized language that they use when they talk to air traffic control, when the pilots talk to everything. Every word has a meaning, and it's very short because that air is, no pun intended, but the hot air that's leaving our mouths, there's a limited time to react. And so those words are very short, concise, and they mean something. We need the same on the UAS side, especially on the emergency response, public safety. And there's a lot that can be taken from what already exists in that. And that's why you're so able to communicate with each other very effectively. But we need a standard, and it needs to be official rather than this unofficial communication style that we've been, that has kind of developed.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Brandon. And I know that Michelle and I and Jason have all had this conversation, is that we have got to instill an aviation culture, which means the language, it means the procedures, all that stuff needs to be in there. And we're still in this learning stage. It's new. And so it's so new in these organizations that we're trying to instill that from the very beginning, to say that's the first thing that you need to be thinking about as you do this. You're doing an aviation program, whether it's a single drone that you're putting in for tactical or you're going to DFR to respond. It's aviation culture, and you're flying the national airspace. You are a pilot, period. So we're working on that. And I think that we it's like with training, we have to have minimum training requirements, and that's in place. And I know that Jason's big on that. And that's one of the things we're going to be looking at big this year as being one of our priorities, is training, is getting into creating some standardization of what are the requirements to be a public safety remote pilot, and to have some standardized certifications for the remote pilots. I'm sorry, but taking a Part 107 test that you can miss 30% of the questions and still pass, which I don't get that. I'm sorry, but you ought to be getting like 99% to pass. And then a practical that you actually can perform and demonstrate what that means. And so we're going to be working with a lot of different people and companies to figure out how to get there. But that's our number one priority this year. But I think the aviation culture is number one as part of that training. The first stage of training is teaching that, and then getting into the practical flight operations.
So question for Charles and David or Jason then. So do you think that maybe this is where the federal government could come into play from an oversight and providing some standardization, is have, whether through DHS, FEMA, or any of these other organizations, a certification program specific for DFR operations?
Well, so DFR, I think, is probably going to be easier to establish a standard for training because of what's already been done.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's more of the remote pilot certifications first that is by far the largest number of drone programs that are across the country. So if you look at 7,000 plus agencies in public safety that have drone programs, there's only right now still 200 that are DFR only. So that's part of what we got to do, because it's the standard of how do you fly in the national airspace.
Sure.
A lot of DFR is probably better trained as far as their remote pilots than any of the other pilots that are out there, and they have the frequency of flying. That means they're flying more often than anybody else. So that's going to be easier as a DFR perspective, but I think that the challenge is going to be on the overall standard. That answers the question.
I do
And I
think,
think it's going to be very progressive, like it is on the man side, right? You start with VFR flights, and you get IFR rated. Now you're IMC, and now you're going from helicopter to airplane. So
Endorsements.
it's not just to jump in and start doing DFR, right? It's
Right.
got to be a very controlled, safe process where you've got a basic RPIC certification, and there is standardized education and training built all around that. Then you get to that advanced operation. Then you get to those DFR operations, but it's a stepping stone. And what we really encourage a lot of agencies not to just see the shiny thing and say, "Oh, I have to go do DFR," right? They've never done a real world drone operation, but now they want to start a DFR program. It's like you don't know the basics yet.
Right.
So that's where we start with all this.
The other thing that's happening is I'm getting calls of people saying, I need that DFR waiver. And I'm like, wait a minute, what are you doing? And they tell me, and I'm like, no, you don't. You're not doing DFR, because now everybody hears DFR and it's easy and it's fast and we can get it in a day and we want to get that. I'm like, no, what are you doing? Because in some cases, for example, they want to do a mile beyond visual line of sight for tactical operations. And I'm like, well, you could do a Part 107 shielded operations waiver and be done with that really quick. And they're like, oh, so there's all this knowledge that we've got to do is educate people. First of all, is what's the basics, as Jason mentioned, and then build on that. Even for program management, we've got to have teaching program management of saying it's an aviation program. You're not just training somebody to fly and they go fly. You've got to deal with the documentation and the procedures and the maintenance and the logs. And it's like, oh, we do all that stuff? Yeah. So, and with that, I got to jump off, but I wanted to say thanks for letting me be here today, and thank all of you all for everything that you do to help public safety. It is greatly appreciated. And I'll be back again.
Right on, Charles. Thanks a lot, man. And then Steven's also calling in. So Steven, thanks for your patience. So I'm going to pull you up here in just like 30 seconds. I wanted to kind of just, and thanks, Charles, just drop whenever you need to, but you're awesome, man. I wanted to answer a quick question that came in. Are there groups in Minnesota for DFR? And for anyone out there that doesn't know, DFR stands for Drone as First Responder. That's what we've been dialoguing about this whole time. I think most of us are aware of that, but helpful to define terms. And so obviously that's law enforcement agencies that are using drones as an actual response to 911 calls for dispatch and all kinds of things that go into that, right? But anyway, are there any groups, Jason, that you know of in Minnesota? If not, who can Nick reach out to?
Well, first I want to say DFR is not just for law enforcement, right? It can be a multidiscipline type of operation. Firefighters, this is one area where we are pushing, because there's a lot of firefighting agencies that are doing DFR programs. They are just not as much in the spotlight, right? Because you don't have the same type of metrics, so it's not as cool and sexy when you're talking about it versus the kind of stuff that they're doing, but it's just as important. So I just want to, for context, put that out there. There are some, as far as I know, there's some small unconsolidated groups in Minnesota, but there's not one large statewide group. If there is a leader in Minnesota that would like to have a drone responder state group, we are happy to do that and have some conversations. The problem is it's a heavier lift than you think it is, right? In Florida, you've got Robert Dooley and his whole team. You've got somebody to herd the cats. In Texas, you've got myself and Captain Fritch. We've got leaders in Ohio and North Carolina. But it's time intensive. And what we don't want is somebody come in and say, hey, yeah, we want to start a Minnesota group. And then 6 months from now, it died out, right? Because one of the first things we did when we established TexGroup, we had a working group in Texas. We just formalized it under the Drone Responders brand. But one of the first things we did is we reached out to all the unconsolidated groups across the state and said, hey, why don't we just absorb you into TexGroup? And they're like, God, thank you so much, because we just don't have the time to do all this, right? We can do it in our small areas, but we don't have the time to do it big picture. So Aaron and myself, we run the website, we do the big marketing and that kind of push, and they handle all the local kind of stuff that's going on. And this model is going to allow us to be at probably 15 to 20 Texas events under the TexGroup name, because there are so many public safety conference or public safety adjacent conferences that go on in the States. I can't be at everything. Right now, I'm out of town 1 week every single month as it is, so I can't go to all these other Texas events. But we have this network, so if you can put that together and you're willing to put in that work, just shoot me an email and we'll get the process started.
As a former, well, not former, I'll still claim I'm a Minnesotan because I'm from there. My family's still from there. So what I'm about to say, please, Nick, don't hold it against me. But there are groups in Wisconsin, and I know you're cringing right now. There's a love-hate relationship between Minnesota and Wisconsin, but there's also North Dakota. And North Dakota is a behemoth in the UAS industry. I can't remember her last name. Michelle, you may know. Aaron is
Hensler.
yeah, thank you. And Nick, again, his name is escaping me, the director up there.
No, it's Trevor Woods.
Trevor, that's right. Nick left.
Right.
Nick's with Deloitte now. But yeah, Trevor Woods. So you have an incredible amount of resources just to your neighboring states. And because Minnesota is, outside of Minneapolis and St. Cloud and some of those more populated areas, it's rather remote. And so partnering with probably Wisconsin, North Dakota, and maybe pulling in South Dakota, Iowa, you're better off because then you can share some of that workload because, as Jason said, it's a tremendous amount of work. It's a volunteer thing, and it takes up a lot of time. But there you go. There's a lot of faces. But yeah, I think that every state is really North Carolina is another great example. Oklahoma's got a tremendous program. And so there's a lot of lessons learned that you can pull and folks that are willing to donate their time to help you build if that's what you're looking for. But just know you're getting into some work and you want to create a coalition within your region to share that workload.
Awesome, guys. Well, I want to shift gears slightly. Steve, thank you so much for your patience. You've been hanging out with us here backstage for the duration of the call here, but I wanted to, I'll let you introduce yourself here in a second, share a little bit about what you do. But in general, I to kind of give everybody context as well, I'm going to show my screen just for 1 second as we've been talking at the beginning. If you missed the beginning of the call, the context here is we're 2 weeks out from the Energy, Drone, and Robotics Summit of 2025 in Houston, Texas. And it's all, as you can see in the photos, we're talking drones of all types, from aerial to surface to subsurface. And it's going to be a pretty exciting event. And Jason Day with Texas DPS is hosting a co-located event with drone responders. And so they've, these events have partnered with us here on the podcast to be able to provide a discount to everybody. So just want to bring that up again and reset the context because we've been talking, pretty specific to drone responders for the call. But now, Steve, I'd love to transition to a little bit more tactical. You heard us talking about some of what it takes to get trained as a drone pilot, a drone operator. Is it Part 107? Should it go beyond that? As we're talking into Part 108 and some of the complexities there of making sure it's not just a quick check the box test, but people actually know what they're doing. So with that said, I wanted to invite you to the call as an actual physical drone operator out in the field. Doing inspections with drones on wind turbines and all kinds of really cool applications. So if you don't mind, just share a quick, comment on who you are, what you do, and if you have anything right off the bat from the previous conversation that you want to speak into, love to hear your advice or thoughts for people out there as well looking to get into drone operations.
Oh yeah, sure. So like David was saying, I pretty much have been doing drone inspections, field operations for over 5 years now. Right now I'm focusing mostly on wind turbines and some telecom stuff coming up. And then as moonlighting, I do basically drone sales, so deal both the DJI drones, but then also all sorts of the American drones. And same thing with inspection. So just people I meet through my network and stuff, if they're looking to have different operations done, if I can't physically do it, I work within networks to be able to provide both the inspection services and then the data processing and kind of just making that stuff happen for people. Take a very consultative approach and just, basically figure out what their specific situation calls for, what kind of drone, what type of processing, I'm very interested in the interaction between computer vision and all this stuff. I think we're going to see a lot of that coming to the forefront, even, especially with DFR. The more data people are able to collect, the more need there's going to be for that computer vision processing. So I'm very interested in the different softwares that, take the drone data and then turn it into an actionable piece of information, whether that's, for what I do, more inspection stuff, but then obviously I think there's going to be software like that in the public safety world too, where it's going to be autonomously processing what the drone is seeing and giving different, insights to the real-time crime center, to the officers on the ground. So, I would say if if you're asking for like a little bit of advice that I would give people, I would say definitely get a cheap drone first. Like Charles was saying, I think it's kind of crazy that you can get your Part 107 and have never flown a drone before. So definitely for people who are interested in getting into it, I would say get a cheap drone and crash it and, really learn to fly, take seriously the aviation side of it and understand the airspace and understand, it seems very easy to fly a drone until it isn't. So that's kind of what I tell people. But the question I kind of wanted to pose to the panel, because I really do come from the private side of stuff, and I'd be interested to hear about, would be, how much of and it was briefly mentioned at the beginning, this intersection between public and private, how much of the actual flying in the DFR space do you guys see being done by people who are within the police department, licensed, I don't know, licensed is the right word, but, commissioned police officers versus it being outsourced to third-party private companies who kind of have their operations center where they might be handling multiple jurisdictions. Like, how do you guys see that playing out in the next year, 2 years? I'd be very curious to hear about that.
Well, I'll take that from the short-term perspective. Is a lot of agencies on the law enforcement side don't really like the idea of contractor non-law enforcement personnel being the actual pilots, right? They can be the visual observers, they can help with the maintenance, all of that. But there's a lot of law enforcement training and instinct that goes into operating that aircraft during a DFR type of situation, because on the law enforcement side, you are responding to something that there are probably ground units coming as well. So we have a course that we teach all of our pilots, and this is something we didn't have early on, where we just focused on the compliance piece and the being an aviator piece. But our manned tactical flight officers from our helicopter crews said, hey, y'all need a movement to contact class for your people, because you need to know how to position that aircraft and provide directions to the boots on the ground so they don't get shot during a tactical situation. And that is vital. So that's not necessarily something that a contractor is going to have any experience in, maybe, right? But that's not something really an agency can focus on, because they need to focus on all that tactical training for their officers. Now, long term, are there other ways to build out a model? Yes, but the next 1 to 2 years, I think that part of it needs to all be internal.
I think we're also hitting on something else that maybe is a gap. So we're now doing these co-located events, and we're now kind of sharing this drone as a first responder or public safety lens with other communities, and we've got a lot of training that's out there already for public safety, for using drones as a first responder. But we haven't actually talked about what Stephen is asking. And I think this is probably a topic that we need to add to the list, Jason, because there probably are going to be retired law enforcement, retired firemen who would be perfectly qualified to be a drone operator as a contractor for public safety in the future. But we haven't addressed that yet. We we've been so crazy about today and just getting through today. But that's a viable suggestion, Stephen, and I appreciate that. And there are other industries who do that, where they bring highly trained contract support on board specific to that mission. And they're probably retired from that sector, so they're very well qualified. A lot of different reasons why that's a good idea. So maybe this is something we just take under advisement and we think about how we message that going forward. Thanks, Stephen. That was a good call.
Oh, go ahead.
I have Steve, that was cool, man. I have a follow-on question, maybe more to Jason, but is there legal liability risk to a contract operator working for a law enforcement as far as like tort law or any type of protection that would need to be covered by the operator for the law enforcement?
I don't know the answer to that. I think it's going to depend on the jurisdiction in the state. It's going to be different everywhere. So that'll be kind of on a case-by-case basis.
Something to think about, because I contracted surveillance in Afghanistan and Iraq for a long time. And one of the big concerns for us is the military had immunity from local law, but we didn't as a contractor. So if I screwed up, if I got somebody harmed, I could have been subject to Afghan law, which you can imagine would not have been very good for me or any of us. So there's and kind of what Jason was getting to as far as the communication and the tactical comms. That's why they only hired a lot of ex-military people that already knew that tactical communication to reduce that potential liability risk. Because if you're operating that drone and you call something out and make a mistake because you didn't have that training, that could be very bad and create a legally volatile situation.
Interesting. Yeah. Or Jason, if you had any comments on that, I did want to, if we didn't run out of time, I wanted to spin off on the machine or vision learning, side of it as well, and kind of touch on AI and some of the like ethical implications of that or anything around that. I mean, I thought that'd be kind of interesting to hear, but if you guys had more comments, I think Jason, you came off mute right there. I don't know if you wanted to, follow up on anything. All right. But yeah, I was just curious. That was one of the topics anyway I wanted to hit today, was just in general, like as AI and machine learning and vision, I don't even remember what you called it, Stephen, but as all those systems advance, things become more autonomous. I guess like two things. What are the human operational challenges of like training and everything there? But then like, are there public perception or ethical issues or anything like that you have to navigate as those technologies just become more capable and they're seeing more, they're using the camera
So
in ways. I don't know. Questions, thoughts, Brandon?
yeah, so I sorry if you can hear the vacuum in the background. There's cleaners at my house. Having leveraged a lot of that tech on the classified surveillance side, I can tell you should never be fully dependent or trust those systems completely. It's there to augment and help and get to decision making faster, because it's processing a lot more data in a faster speed than what we can. And if it comes to a solution, that's okay, but you still have to apply what we call humanize the data and the output to make it make sense based on other factors that the machine may not be taking into place, like you just said, the ethical, the other things. A perfect example is, we had systems that could identify certain types of weapons, and the system would identify a weapon and say, yes, that's this, you, based on rules of engagement or whatever, you're good to go. While next door, which was not in the database, was a mosque, a religious facility. And so we decided not to do anything because of the potential collateral effects that could have on the community and a lot of the other things that go on, right? So AI is an augmenting tool. It's fantastic. There's so many great uses that it can help to process data and help, guide. But at the end of the day, the human has to make the decision also, because there has to be somebody responsible for that decision, and that needs to be a person.
I think you're also touching on the simulation aspect of this. AR, VR, very powerful simulation language opportunities for us in this sphere. You know, the robustness of those languages allow for us to be able to capitalize on what the sensors are picking up and fuse that into real life training modules. And as the AR VR technology continues to grow in leaps and bounds, the realism of those scenarios is getting phenomenal. So there's that aspect too, that yes, we are going to be able to take advantage of some of this, definitely for training purposes.
Yeah, I'd agree with all of that. You know, from a human perspective, we're limited on the amount that we can process in real time and our attention spans. And especially during a public safety UAS mission, we tell all of our pilots the first 5 minutes is fun and sexy. Everything after that is work. And it can be very boring very quickly, right? Whether you're doing a search and rescue where that aircraft is just flying a pattern over and over and over, and then your phone dings and your laptop dings, and all of the things around you are now distracting you from focusing on saving lives or looking for whatever you're looking for. So AI can really help solve that problem. But the first thing I ever ask a vendor that's in this space is, how are you building your models? What is your AI built on? And if it's just all theoretical model stuff and no real world applications, then that's not what we're looking for. We need people that are going to go out and train these models in the real world, not just on what some engineer thought about in a room banging at a keyboard, right? Those people are valuable, but there needs to be the real world side of all of it. And then on the other part, there's also, we talk to all these agencies and we teach that agencies need to be transparent with how they're doing all of this and have a conversation with their communities, have a conversation with the privacy groups. You know, somebody that I run into at a lot of conferences and we are on a lot of panels together is Jay Stanley with the ACLU. And we are very friendly. I love the dude, but we have honest conversations, right? He has his opinion. His organization has one opinion. Public safety and law enforcement specifically has different opinions, but we can find a middle ground and do all of this in a transparent way, because everybody's goal is to help our communities.
That's such, Jason, you brought back nightmares. I have just shy of 2,000 hours actually behind the seat doing surveillance, and most of my other time was being a mission director. I can tell you probably about 15 of that 2,000 hours was actually exciting. Everything else was awfully boring and terrible. So, but again, that's where I think the AI can be such of use is like, let's say it comes back to me like Ocean's 11, where you have one person monitoring hundreds of videos. That's, no human can do that. And so I think that's where the AI can really come into play and alert a human, hey, there's something weird going on here, you should look at it, and then bring into that play, and then the human makes that decision. So again, and then to the second point, yes, you got to communicate. I've seen DFR programs go good and bad, and it's the bad ones are always because they did not communicate effectively with the public and be completely transparent on what they're doing, and that always creates a mystery and an animosity to what's going on.
Steven, do you have any other comments real world about I don't know, anything that they're sharing as you're flying real time, real world? Like you mentioned, it's easier to crash a drone than you think when you're trying to get into this. I mean, that was a big one, but what do you see? I don't know. What's your comments on it? Love to get more like hands-on experience in today's world.
Yeah, I mean, I guess for people listening who may not be, who are learning about this stuff, the two ways that I see computer vision, AI playing into these type of operations is one during the actual flying side. So that's kind of, where Jason's talking about during the actual flight mission, having an AI sort of guiding the flight, looking for things during the flight. what I do, that plays a role, right? Where you can have a, computer on board the drone processing, okay, where is the wind turbine? So that's one side of it, and the other side is back end processing. And a lot of that has to do with how much compute is on the drone versus how much compute is needed to do the analysis and whether the processing is being done during flight or after flight. But I mean, in terms of just real world stuff, I would say, going off what other people were saying, is definitely during operations it gets very repetitive, and you have to kind of find that right balance of, you can't be like too laser focused all the time, because it's almost, you almost can't be in that mindset for 8-10 hours a day. But you also have to be, ready at a moment's notice for something to go wrong, especially during these autonomous operations, because you're sort of trusting the computer until something happens, and something happens. It's I don't go a week without having some error or data connection loss, and so you're basically trying to set up all the conditions to have a successful, safe flight. But things are going to happen. You do have to be able to kind of snap to when that does happen. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what else to add with that. I mean, my experience is a lot more on the inspection side than the public safety side. One of the things I'm curious to figure out, Jason's talking about the type of person who is developing these programs, and really the best practices for that. I agree. I think that's a very big issue. And I think probably the successful players in that are going to be able to find a sort of universal language or a way to bring in data from all sorts of different types of fields to come up with the best solutions. So someone who is able to bring in data from agriculture, bring in data from infrastructure, bring in data from public safety, and sort of have I mean, that's where people are going with this whole idea of a general intelligence. Obviously people have figured out how to create language models that are well versed on all sorts of subjects. I think you're probably going to see that for computer vision as well. And that'll be kind of the winner in the space, is someone who's able to train a computer vision model that is intelligent across a wide spectrum. It's not just able to look at rocks in a field or just able to see cracks on a bridge, but is able to take a cue and then identify things. So I think that's kind of where we're going. But
That's great.
we're
gonna have to wrap up here, Steve. We're coming right up to the end of the hour. But man, thank you so much. Thank you, each one of you. I know, Michelle, you're gonna have to drop here in a split second. Thank you so much. Thanks, Brandon. Thanks, Jason, as always. And
David, I just want to throw out one thing. Please. If anybody from AUVSI, the Commercial Drone Alliance, is listening, listen to what Steven just said. He said someone should do this. I think you're uniquely positioned to have a lot of access to a lot of those folks. Maybe this is something you all should take a look at.
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Awesome, everyone. And hopefully we'll see some of you guys at that Energy Drone Robotics conference here in 2 weeks. Jason and I will be there. A couple other folks. Matt Sloan, who's usually on the podcast with Skyfire AI. We'll talk to you guys all next week, and we'll see you live. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.